Variants have been another concern of health experts.
Well, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50.
Season and last season will be the fans. Every game will have some fans, although the number of fans depends on where the game is being played. Now, last year, the season was shortened to just 60 games. This year, Major League Baseball hopes to have every team compete in all 162 scheduled games.
That's CBS's Steve Futterman. President Biden says the decision by the Texas Rangers to allow full attendance is a mistake. University of North Carolina says legendary basketball coach Roy Williams is retiring. 48 years in the sport. Right now on Wall Street, the Dow is up 110 points. The NASDAQ is ahead 222. This is CBS News.
Facet Wealth, personalized and affordable financial planning for everyday Americans. No wealth or asset minimums. Quality financial advice for every stage of your life.
The border is in crisis. President Trump secured the border, but Biden is spending $86 million on hotel rooms for migrants. Now, Grant Stinchfield investigates Biden's executive orders and dangerous policies. Watch Stinchfield on Newsmax TV tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern as he reveals the dangers. Find Newsmax TV on all major cable systems or get it free on Roku, YouTube, Xumo, Pluto, and smart TVs. Plus, download the free Newsmax app on your phone. Help protect our border. Watch Newsmax TV's Stinchfield tonight.
On our first date, we had masks on and kept 6 feet apart. Now, we're a lot closer.
Just like Cliff and Deb, thousands of singles over 50 found their perfect match on Silver Singles last year.
I feel like I'm 20 years old again, and I'm pretty sure she feels the same way.
Rediscover the magic of dating with Silver Singles, the exclusive community for singles over 50. Sign up today and receive daily matches you won't want to miss at silversingles.com/radio. silversingles.com/radio.
For some, the pandemic has meant weight gain. For others, perhaps it's led to struggles. For folks with eating disorders,
the National Eating Disorders Association reported a 41% increase in calls in January 2021 compared with the same month last year. And a study published in July from the International Journal of Eating Disorders revealed that among Americans, 23% regularly binge eat stockpiled food. The uptick reportedly stems from a relapse caused by isolation and a fear around food shortages during the early part of the pandemic. Many new cases came from first responders and teenagers. Lisa Mateo, CBS News.
20 years ago today, the Netherlands became the first country on earth to legalize same-sex marriage. Now it's legal in the U.S. and 27 other countries and Taiwan. 70 countries still have laws criminalizing same-sex relations. South Africa is the only country in Africa that has legalized it. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
WPTV's First Alert Weather on WPSL is brought to you by Seacoast Air Conditioning. Family owned and operated on the Treasure Coast since 1982. Online at seacoastair.com. Now with a look at our forecast, here's meteorologist James Whelan.
Today's forecast, sunshine through the lunchtime hours. Then we'll look for a chance for showers and thunderstorms between 3 and 7 as a cold front will move on through. High temps in the mid-80s, turning windy and much colder tonight with low temperatures down into the 50s. High temperatures on Good Friday, only in the low 70s as we go into Easter weekend, staying on the cool side. I'm WPTV First Alert meteorologist James Whelan for WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
At Seacoast Air Conditioning, they believe in 3 basic fundamentals: answer the phone, show up on time, and fix the problem right the first time. Seacoast Air, family owned and operated since 1982, waiting to answer your call 24/7.
Comfort crisis, don't roast, call Seacoast.
The IRSC Pioneer men's team cut down the nets, ending the regular season with a huge win over Miami-Dade. The Pioneers are alone in first place in the Southern Conference, heading into the state tournament Thursday, April 8th. The IRSC ladies will play in the state tourney Wednesday, April 7th on WPSL. IRSC 2021 is presented by the Quit Dog Foundation of Martin County, Las Brisas Mexican Restaurant in Fort Pierce, Indian River State College Athletics, Nice Air, the St. Lucie Draft House, Hoskins, Turkle, Lloyd & Lloyd, Seacoast Air Conditioning, Stumbles of Stuart, and Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Daddy, watch this dance.
That's some pretty good Irish step dancing.
I bet the Chinese people don't dance like that.
No, I don't think so, but they do have an amazing form of healing called acupuncture.
You're just saying that because you're an acupuncture physician, Chinese herbalist, and pharmacist.
No, when you get older, you'll contemplate being able to dance like you do now.
What's contemplate?
It's what a lot of Treasure Coast people do when they get older, have symptoms of disease and wish they had better health.
Healthy like me? Why don't they have a free evaluation at your office?
You're so smart. It's never too late to learn a better way to help, honey.
Have them call 398-4550. Ask for Dr. Stuart Shipe, my daddy. Their problems aren't going to get better, maybe worse.
Yes, it's called degenerative disease.
They'll feel much better if you can help them, right?
They'll feel great.
It doesn't cost anything to find out if you can help them.
Not a penny. I'm not going to waste their time or money if I can't help them.
Call Dr. Stuart Shipe at 398-4550.
Visit the office in North Stuart or the website, traditionalchinesehealing.com.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
From the beginning of time, humans have tried to heal themselves with ritual and prayer and with whatever nature provided. Through thousands of years of trial and error, formal systems of healthcare developed, systems based on foods, herbs, and other natural remedies. These systems live side by side with what we call Western medicine. Western medicine has been an enormous benefit in helping to conquer devastating infections and perfecting surgical procedures. But there is more to medicine than doctors and hospitals, and that's exactly what we'll explore this week on A Better Way to Health. Hello, I'm Stuart Shipe, a registered pharmacist, acupuncture physician, and Chinese herbalist. I'm your host this week. We make no effort to recommend or to judge, only offer that you explore a theory that good medicine comes in many forms. So let's get started. Phone lines are open for you this morning for questions, comments, or experiences about your health on WPSL at 340-1590. That's 340-1590. Let's hear from you.
All right, folks, time to start another show. Hopefully I change one more person's life for the rest of their life and change your destiny, change your medical history. I hope that's true, but it can only be true if you get involved in the show. I really want to educate you, but I also want to try and help bring your balance back. And that comes through questions. So give us a call, 340-1590 here at the studios. You can also get us on the office phone number here. That's 398-4550. On the internet at Traditional Chinese Healing, traditionalchinesehealing.com. And or stop by our office. We're located right north of the Roosevelt Bridge here in beautiful Stuart, Florida. If you're actually on Facebook, like Elaine, thank you very much for watching today. You can actually visualize the show, facebook.com/Dr. Shipe. And all now our shows are being cataloged, which is pretty cool, on YouTube by WPSL. And these guys do a great job at maintaining my prior shows. So if you want to get on YouTube, that's where you would, and you can call the studios, 340-1590. They can explain that to you as well on how to get previous shows viewed. So welcome to the show. If this is the very first time you guys have tuned in, I'm Dr. Stuart Shipe. I am a acupuncture physician, board certified herbalist, and an acupuncture registered pharmacist. And I bring you today a combination of Western and Eastern medicine, kind of the best of both worlds to try and figure out what's going on with the body. I'm usually the physician of last resort, which usually I'm okay. Patients will be two or three ear, nose, throat, or cardiologists or dermatologists, and really have opted not in for the drug thing or just treating symptoms. So they come to me and say, Dr. Shipe, how do you look at illness differently? I know I heard that Chinese medicine is a little bit different. And I don't need you to understand the yin, the yang, the dampness of phlegm. You don't understand that kind of stuff. What you do understand, just really simple logic that the body is all connected. And the only way that you really can efficiently treat the body is to let it help itself. I truly believe that. That's the whole natural principles, of course, of many natural medicines, but in Chinese medicine, it's paramount that we treat an individual differently than everyone else with disease. So saying that and going through all of that with you, now I talk about disease states in Western medicine. And the unfortunate act of it is that's the only way that Western minds get a hold of a subject, because to the Chinese, a lot of disease development, it doesn't matter the disease name, comes from just things that we all know about: habitual overeating, lack of exercise, being sedentary, uncontrollable emotions, too much anxiety, stress, depression, anger, and so forth, environmental toxicities. And they understood thousands of years ago that these things affected the body. And when the body became blocked or stagnated in its energetic flow, that it caused disease or pain. So today, probably one of the things that I see most prevalent in society that I'm going to talk about, a woman's disorder for sure, is the likelihood that a thyroid gland, which is, we're going to describe that in actuality, the thyroid gland in itself becomes affected and inflamed. Now you say, well, isn't that thyroid problems like hypothyroid? Yes, but I'm going to take it a step further, and we're going to go into something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I see this a lot in my practice, a lot. I mean, probably the incidence is 1 out of 10,000 women. I probably see maybe out of 50 women that come into my practice, I'm already, out of 50 women, 1 or 2 of those women have not been diagnosed with significant thyroid disorders. And it's blatantly clear, but you have to be looking for it.
So what's the difference between the normal thyroid problem and that?
Exactly. So we're going to discuss that today, but the big difference is hypothyroidism, or a weakening of the gland where you're not producing enough metabolic energy, is usually just defined as hypothyroidism. It may be, oh, you're not getting enough iodine. Everyone hears about that. Or maybe you had a mother or a genetic history of thyroid issues, hypothyroid issues. I get it. But thyroiditis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, is actually a form of autoimmune thyroiditis. It means it's an attack of the immune system on the thyroid gland itself. It's way beyond just the hypothyroidism in general. It's actually where the immune system has become involved. It's the same members of family like diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, multiple sclerosis. All of these type of autoimmune disorders are where the immune system becomes dysregulated and is attacking self-tissue, and specifically here in the thyroid itself. It's a slowly developing, persistent inflammation of that thyroid, leading to a decreased glandular function, which means the thyroid ultimately gets weaker and weaker and weaker. The problem with that, although this condition can occur at any age, it's most common among middle-aged women. And that's where I see it. I mean, right around menopause, 49, 50 years old, women are coming into the practice and saying, Dr. Shipe, I'm not feeling great. Other than the hot flashes and night sweats, I'm so tired and my hair's thinning and falling out. And my hands and feet are tending to get cold or chilled off. And I have really dry skin and my nails are cracking. And oh, by the way, I've taken collagen supplements for the last year and biotin and the skin, hair and nails supplements, and nothing's working. And I can't understand it because I'm sure that it has to do with a deficiency of collagen. That's like, probably not. Not only the sexual hormones are going south, but at this point in time, your thyroid may be significantly affected. And it's so different in a woman than it is in men. Not only the incidence is fairly low of hypothyroidism in men, not absent, because I do have males in the practice that have hypothyroid problems. But these autoimmune disorders, these glandular problems, because the thyroid is a gland is described as a tissue that excretes hormones into the system. And it does excrete thyroid hormones, but so does diabetes, Addison's disease, which is a problem in the adrenals, and hypoparathyroidism or hypoparathyroidism. This is the parathyroid gland is actually embedded into the back of the thyroid gland itself. Now, the thyroid and the parathyroid are so closely related. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the parathyroid, but what is its function in the body? It controls bone growth, is a primary manifestation. So if the parathyroid's healthy, no problems with bone growth. But if you are suffering from osteopenia, osteoporosis, and they really haven't checked out your parathyroid function, it probably would be a pretty good idea to make sure that organ system was on board and active. The other one is the pituitary is involved. And I'll explain a lot of this coming up. And vitiligo, which not a lot of people understand this problem, especially in Western medicine, vitiligo, where the skin has patches of white, usually on the face, but it could be anywhere on the skin, on the back, on the front, occurs where it's a depigmentation, where the immune system is actually attacking melanin. And melanin is the actual pigment that makes our skin the color of our skin. So if it attacks the pigment, it's kind of like taking the color out of paint, right? Because paint is nothing but pigments. And you take that out, and then you'll have blotches of white. And some people say, oh, that's a tinea versicolor. That might be a fungal infection. Well, it could be, but you really want to rule out the fact that it might not be vitiligo, which is literally there's no pain involved in it, but it's disfiguring to the point where you don't want to have people looking around and say, what's wrong with your face? You know, why is some of your face white patches? And it's disturbing in that way. But listen to me, if you're intolerant to cold, if you're gaining weight, if you're really, really fatigued, if you have constipation issues, dry skin, maybe a little bit of a second chin. You ever heard of that before? Like a double chin as a female here. You may, or thinning of the hair falling out, losing the last lateral third of the eyebrow. You may be suffering from a thyroid imbalance. Now, you're going to go in and your Western medical physician, and they're very, very smart folks, is going to tell you that that we're going to run a whole panel of labs and you're going to run a thyroid test, but they don't run the whole complementary panel of thyroid function testing. They only run a pituitary evaluation, which is called a TSH. Now, I'm going to explain, hopefully you guys can hang with me when I explain how the thyroid system works and make it really understandable, so you know that there's many, many reasons why you can have a sub-functioning thyroid. Thank you, Thelma, also for watching on Facebook. So Hashimoto's usually is started by what? Well, we don't really know particularly what starts all autoimmune disease, but we can theorize that it's something, a hiccup in the immune system that occurs when we have a viral invasion, perhaps, maybe Epstein-Barr virus, herpes virus, coronavirus. When we have a viral attack, it can sneak into tissues and start causing damage in how tissues replicate, how a cell makes another cell. Viruses are nasty at doing that. They hijack our whole system of replication, of cellular replication. So what ends up happening is the immune system's called into that area and says, you know, we have a foreign invader in the house and we need to start getting rid of him. But he's so tricky that he kind of masks himself to look just like the tissue, sometimes like the thyroid tissue. So when your immune system is trying to get rid of a virus that it thinks is in the house, it accidentally becomes naive and starts attacking our healthy tissue. That's not a good thing, for sure. And in Hashimoto's, there's attacks at different places of the thyroid. So when you take in iodine, men, women, we all need iodine. It's an essential mineral. When you take in iodine into the system, the body needs that in every single cell. When you ingest iodine, it goes in the system, gets into the bloodstream, and then all of that blood is filtering through the thyroid gland itself. The thyroid gland would be like a big filter. And as that iodine comes through the thyroid gland, the thyroid's on its lookout for iodine. It grabs that baby really, really quickly, and it takes it out of the bloodstream and it puts it into the thyroid gland. Now, once it's in the thyroid gland, it can't utilize iodine because that's a rock. It's just a mineral. It has to change it or convert it into the active and relatively inactive forms of the thyroid hormone. How does it do that? It uses an enzyme called a peroxidase enzyme. And that enzyme converts iodine into something we call T4. And I'm not going to go any farther, just know it's T4, okay? T4 is one of two thyroid hormones. It has some activity, about 90% of it, though, in the thyroid, once it's released from the thyroid gland, it's not too active, but it has about 10% activity. But the key here is the enzyme. I don't want to leave that yet. The enzyme is imperative that it changes the iodine to the T4. In Hashimoto's, one of the attacks of the immune system is attacking that enzyme so that you can't convert the iodine to the inactive form of the thyroid hormone, to T4. And this is a problem because if you can't convert, you may be getting plenty of iodine, but folks, it's not an iodine problem. So when you read books and textbooks that say, oh, you have hypothyroidism, you need to take natural iodine. You know, Dr. McCormick out of UCLA has a great book. Dr. I think it's Dearborn, about iodine being used for preventing breast cancer. Great stuff. But the whole goal is sometimes is an iodine issue. So we got plenty of iodine, and we need to make sure that we are ingesting plenty of iodine in foods that are high or actually have iodine in them. But we have iodine now, and we've now converted. Let's say it's not the enzyme, but we've converted that now into T4. That T4 is now stored in the thyroid gland and released little by little by little into the bloodstream. It's released little by little in the bloodstream by what command? By the pituitary, which is a higher brain center. It's kind of like, I think about the thyroid like as I'm a pilot and I fly planes, right? So when I get the top instruction of how air traffic control should be controlled comes from the FAA. That would be considered in my book, the hypothalamus. That's your temperature regulation center. And it is a major brain center, the hypothalamus. If the hypothalamus feels like the metabolism is a little bit low, we're losing temperature, he says, hey, I know a good way to raise the temperature up, to raise the metabolism up. I'm going to wake up the pituitary and say, pituitary, you need to wake up the thyroid and figure out what's going on in the thyroid. So the hypothalamus will signal the pituitary, and the pituitary will release a little hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. Obviously, I just told you what that was. TSH. And unfortunately, that's one of the only tests that most Western doctors are running to see if you have thyroid issues. And I'll tell you why that's not always dependable. In fact, most of the time, not always dependable. So now the pituitary's got the command from the FAA. The pituitary is the control tower at an airport. It says, all you planes on the ground, all you hormones, you need to move in a specific way. You have too much traffic or not enough traffic, but I'm the controller of that traffic. So the control tower is the pituitary. It sends that signal to the thyroid. Now, if the thyroid is not working optimally based on the hypothalamus's response, that signal will go to the thyroid, said, thyroid, get busy and work. So what ends up happening, that TSH, that lab number will get higher and higher and higher the more that pituitary wants that thyroid to function. That is kind of a hypothyroid situation, right? So now you've got the pituitary yelling at the thyroid saying, get busy. And then the thyroid says, okay, if you want me to get busy, I'll release more T4 into the blood. Now that T4 is very, very unique because once it's released in the blood, that hormone, all hormones require a carrier. I'm going to call that T4 a cowgirl, okay? That cowgirl needs a horse to ride on to get around the track, to get all the way through the body and to get where it needs to act, right? So that thyroid hormone is called thyroglobulin. A globulin is a protein. We're going to call the globulin the horse. Here's an important fact. Autoimmune disease and Hashimoto's can attack the horse. And so your thyroid is acting fine. You're intaking enough iodine, you're converting it through the enzyme to T4. T4 is being stored in the body. But now the cowgirl wants to leave the ranch and there's no horses. Why there are no horses? Well, because the gland is being attacked. That specific protein is being singled out and attacked. It could be the fact that you're not ingesting enough protein either, right? If you're not ingesting enough protein, that could be a problem. And these are really common sometimes in vegetarians or vegans that aren't digesting or have enough protein in the diet, but it doesn't have to be that specific diet. They're great diets. I'm just saying you need to make sure you have enough protein in the diet. Okay, so now the cowgirl, let's say it's not that. Let's say the cowgirl is found a horse and the immune system is not attacking that specific protein, not attacking the horses today. Okay, so now we have a problem where the cowgirl gets on the horse, mounts the horse, and goes out. Now, the key that most docs don't understand is that the conversion to the active form of the thyroid hormone. Remember, I told you there's two different thyroid hormones. One's T4, the other one's called T3. T3 is the active form of the thyroid hormone. It is a metabolic driver. It is a, wow, you want to raise metabolism, you want to lose weight, you want to get the body back in full vitality. T3 is your key, right? So how do we get T3? We convert it from T4 is converted or changed into T3. Where? In the liver, in the kidney, in the intestines, in tissues. So what you're telling me, Dr. Shipe, is I can actually have enough T4, which is, by the way, if your thyroid already is hypofunctioning, they're going to right away, without checking where it's hypofunctioning at, they're going to usually put you on a drug called levothyroxine or Synthroid, which is nothing more than synthetic T4. It's not natural T4, it's synthetic T4. So now you got the picture that if you're not converting from iodine to T4, that might be a pretty good option, right? You're just kind of loading in T4. But the key is that's very, very minimal when you look at the big scheme of things in most women and a little bit in guys, but I mostly like talking about women with thyroid. So if T3 is not being changed, converted, if T4 is not converting to T3, why is it not converting to the active form of the thyroid hormone? Well, people have fatty liver disease. They got kidney problems. Their gut's a mess. They got bloating, gas, indigestion, reflux, no bile flow. They're not digesting fats. It's a mess in there in the digestive system. And if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, you have to treat that first before you even go back and treat the thyroid, because that's the conversion problem potentially. There's a test in the thyroid. Remember, when I keep on saying thyroid panel, that's what you want to ask your physician for. I want a complete thyroid panel run. I want to know how much free T4, how many cowgirls are out there circulating. I want to know how many cowgirls are actually still mounted on their horses, because a cowgirl mounted on a horse does not exude an effect in the body. She has to get off of her horse. It's called free thyroid hormone in order to create an effect in the body at the tissue. So as long as you got hormones riding around on proteins, they're really not exerting any kind of effect. It's when they dismount, they attach themselves now to a tissue. Now that tissue creates the resultant effect of the thyroid, which is usually increasing metabolism in a woman. So that's why it's so important. You have to look at tissue, the conversion, the tissue. Now, there are labs in that panel that will look at the liver. It's called an anti-thyroid test, or T3 uptake, or reverse T3 is also very, very helpful. These type of labs look at how well is that thyroid being utilized in the liver? How well is that thyroid gland? Is there something that's not converting? And we have a conversion problem. Majority of women, I'll be honest, that in my practice that I see, it has nothing to do with iodine. Sometimes doesn't have a lot to do either with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the autoimmune problem. It has to do with they've got fatty livers, overweight, obese, digestive problems, kidney problems. And that's the problem, is they're not converting. So that you can take all the Synthroid and levothyroxine in the world, and you're not going to solve that problem. And that's why when you have women come into a doc and they have their TSH done, by the way, the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, remember it's that pituitary is yelling at the thyroid gland. If that gets excessive, out of control, and the thyroid gland is doing too much activity, then all of that feedback is coming back to the hypothalamus again. All those thyroid hormones are making communication back to the hypothalamus. That's that loop, that kind of check and balance system. And the hypothalamus said, whoa, we have way too much thyroid hormone now in the system. And it says to the pituitary, shut her down. And so now the pituitary, instead of yelling at the thyroid gland, is only whispering to the thyroid gland, saying, dude, you're working dudette, you're working way too hard. You don't have to work that hard. And so then the thyroid kind of shuts down. That's called hyperthyroidism, the opposite. And sometimes this autoimmune attack can be so vigilant on that gland. Hashimoto's usually will start out as a hyperthyroid problem. Oh, sweating, jitteriness, anxiety. What do you call hypothyroidism? You call it just looking at a person that just ran a 5K, just ran a marathon. They're sweating, they're anxious, their heart's pounding. That's thyroiditis. That means it's out of control. You got to shut that baby down very, very quickly. That could be life-threatening. That goes into something called thyroid storm. You're in trouble, because that's emergency room stuff. They got to calm that down. But let's keep on track here about the conversion. If you're not converting, Synthroid is not going to help this problem. You actually then need to go to the thyroid hormones themselves and maybe give the woman a little bit of the T3. And you can do that synthetically. Again, that's called Cytomel, is a brand name of that, but it's active form of thyroid hormone. Now, I guess you want to know, so what's the natural? You've been talking about all this Western stuff. What's the natural part of thyroid? How do you treat it naturally, Dr. Shipe? You're going to have to wait until I take a break, because I need a drink, and then we will get right back to a better way to health. So stay tuned to learn about, so how do you treat it? How do you not only diagnose it truly, but how do you treat it? We'll discuss that as soon as we get back from break. I'm Dr. Stuart Shipe. Hey, Steve, thanks for coming on. Elaine, Thelma, all you guys are great. Have questions. I will try and get to those if you want to type them in. And certainly, folks, 340-1590 is a way you get your question in. If you are doubting whether your thyroid is effectively working or not, get it checked out, man, because this is a low, slow, insidious disorder. And if you catch it early, you're going to have great results. You wait too long, harder to treat. I'll be right back.
Wednesday morning, Dr. Shipe. Will you be taking our children to school this morning, or am I?
I really need some time to prepare for my weekly radio program, A Better Way to Health. Would you mind, honey, taking the kids to school this morning?
What's in it for me?
I'll trade you a free acupuncture treatment and invigorating Tuina Chinese medical massage for all the stress you're under.
I already get acupuncture. I'm married to an acupuncturist, remember? You have to do better than that.
Call our staff at 398-4550 and tell them to prepare the Chinese herbal formula that boosts your chi and energy so you can breeze through today without any concerns or worries.
You just have an answer for any complaint.
Honey, that's the beauty of being an acupuncture physician. You get to study over 3,000 years of problems and how to solve them.
Solve the problem of sleeping on the couch tonight, Dr. Shipe, Mr. Chinese Emperor.
Well, actually, the emperors had concubines and slept in a different room each night with...
Keep pushing it and your pillow can be on the porch.
Got it. Kids, let's go to school.
Call Dr. Stuart Shipe at 398-4550 for a solution to your problem.
Visit their Treasure Coast location in Stuart.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:36 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on with Dr. Stuart Shipe, A Better Way to Health. I've got a question for you. You know, I
Sure.
went to a lot of young female coaches coaching ladies basketball teams. And there's one that I know that she's not even 30 yet. and she's taking thyroid medicines. I know you talked about middle age, but it seems like, and actually, I actually met a player over in southwestern Florida who's still in college, and she's on thyroid medicines.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's happening earlier and earlier and earlier. And so the question, what question, folks? If you've been watching me for a very long period of time or listening to me, what do I always tell you? The most important question in medicine is why, or the word is why. You have to find the why. And remember, I told you about lock and key type of, we'll talk about lock and key communication links. You all can visualize a lock and a key going in, and you turn the key and the lock opens, right? This is pharmacy. This is the whole foundation of the practice of pharmacy. We call it receptor chemistry. Receptor, it means something that's being received, right? So tissues have a lot of locks on them, so to speak. And the keys are the hormone. So when the hormone hits that tissue, it's like a key going into a lock. And some type of hormones will actually go into the lock. But you ever had a key that went into a lock, but it didn't turn? It was kind of like it looked very good, like it would fit, but it didn't turn the lock. That's what we call a receptor being blocked. But when a hormone goes into that receptor or that lock, that hormone turns on the communication. It turns on that tissue for whatever that tissue wants to exert as far as an effect in the body. This is called the lock and key receptor theory. And these are where T4 and T3 are working in the body. They're working on tissues. Every single tissue in the human body has iodine receptors. So this is a key. And iodine, you're like, has iodine, but you're talking T4, T3. Iodine is the base molecule in which little tweaks are being done to that iodine. But realistically, by the time you look at T4 and T3, I'm not going to get into the chemistry, the phytochemistry of all this, but that is an iodine-like structure. So that's what I'm saying. Once that damage has been done, or once that thyroid is affected, it's a communication problem. That the FAA has lost all communication with the control tower. The control tower has lost all communication. Can you imagine having planes on it? Oh, I can imagine. I've been there. Can you imagine losing radio communication with a control tower? Can you imagine the havoc that causes? It's crazy. Thank goodness we got light gun signals, green and red, green, land, red, don't land. Oh, and so you have a communication problem. That's critical that communication remain open. Autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, causes a communication problem. And the thyroid gland becomes very, very confused. Not a good gland to become confused because it controls all the metabolism in our system. So when you really look for, is it likely that I have the problem? I explained to you one more time. Let me go through some of the warning signs that your thyroid might not be working optimally, okay? Some symptoms to watch for in hypothyroid would be weight gain or difficulty losing weight. You've tried everything and you just cannot drop weight. Good low glycemic diet, ketogenic diet, nothing's working. Maybe a thyroid issue for sure. Constipation, fatigue. This is one that goes way underdiagnosed, and I look for it all the time, is forgetfulness or mental or cognition, like fogginess. Patients are like, my mental status isn't that great. And we just say, well, I got too much on my mind. I might have the very first stages of Alzheimer's disease, which may be, subjective cognitive decline is very, very common as well. But the thyroid really is instrumental in clear thinking, so to speak, and memory. Depression or depressive episodes, dry skin or hair loss or hair thinning is very, very common. And a slow heart rate. Instead of speeding like in hyperthyroidism, it's very, very slow. So of course you're going to gain weight that way. And the other one is feeling cold or a sensitivity to cold. Why is that never picked up with Florida physicians? Because if you're asking a woman, hey, do you have cold feet and cold hands, or do you feel chilled, or do you have an adverence, like a greater sensitivity to cold weather? And the woman will say, oh, no, I never had that. Well, you're in Florida. What do you expect? It's 80 degrees, 90 degrees every single day. So my question to them usually is, hey, when you were in Jersey or Michigan or when you were up north, did you have sense? Oh, I hated the cold. That's why we're down here in Florida. Done. Diagnosis done. Because that's the true pattern that they're expressing, right? But if you're just looking for things topically, symptoms topically, that's why you have to spend more than 5 minutes with the patient, guys and ladies. I'm talking to physicians. You have to spend enough time that you can understand how this disorder is working and doing a good differential. And the other thing is, usually if you're still menstruating, like Greg was mentioning, the volleyball coaches and stuff like that, changes in the menstrual cycle, usually longer and heavier periods. And so if a woman's having dysmenorrhea, which is abnormal and sometimes painful menstrual discharge, everybody's looking at, well, go right on birth control pills. That just screws up the mess. Sorry about, but it screws up the mess even more. Now, a woman is all about hormones and all about blood. The goal is to try and focus on balancing the hormones she has instead of adding in a ton more, because now you've got all this signaling going on to the hypothalamus, the pituitary. You've got LH, FSH. These are hormones that both guys and women have, but they're like the release of eggs and preparation for the endometrium, for having a baby. And now you got the thyroid messed in here. Why is this such a huge deal to me? Because the number one, I'd probably say the number one problem that patients come in to see me for is just generally fatigue. They might not have it as their main problem, but they just feel like the vitality or the fire of life is just about out. My slogan thus from that was get back to life again, like get the body back. People come in and say, oh, I'm so tired, Dr. Shipe, all the time, and I'm eating good and I'm exercising. And the more it seems like I eat, the more exercise, the more I eat good, or the more I exercise, I get worse. And help, because no one wants to help me except give me drugs. And I don't want to take medications, just for a lack of vitality, a lack of energy. And instantly, I might be a little bit biased, but my brain instantly goes to weirdness, right? I'm a weird doc. I look for things that aren't common in people. And that's why I'm usually the last resort and not the first resort for most people, is because they are looking for the common stuff. But I'll tell you, today's world is not common. Today's world is uncommon. If you've ever heard of coronavirus or COVID, you know that we're in a medical crisis in this country now, but we're also in an understated medical crisis. We have diabetes on the rise. More than 50% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. We've got Lyme disease. That's a really slow, insidious epidemic that no one, I'm telling you, you think that Hashimoto's thyroiditis is undiagnosed. Holy cow, you start talking about Lyme, babesiosa, Borrelia, cat scratch fever. This stuff, viral disorders, Epstein-Barr virus, herpes virus, cytomegalovirus. This is my world. And then you get into the weird stuff like organophosphates, the toxins and parabens, the toxins and phthalates, and just the PCBs in bottled water. I mean, throw that bottled water away. That's killing you guys. The plasticizers in the bottle is actually leaking in the water. Yes, and Greg's showing me his bottled water. So, and people don't understand that we live in a society of a bio burden. What does that mean? It's not that one thing is killing us. It's one thing after another thing that we're exposed to starts affecting our tissues and starts affecting our hormones. We're eating hormones that are dysregulating our system. They're called endocrine, remember that word, glands that release hormones, endocrine disruptors. What does it mean? They disrupt the entire mess, all the communication mess. So if you have, I have a question, I have to answer a couple questions. So Thelma's asking me, so what do you say about the thyroid blood test and what kind of test, please? Ask the physician for a thyroid panel. And the panel would include, get your notes ready or listen to or watch the video again, because I only want to say it one time, a TSH, free T4, and then also total T4. Total T4 is the amount of cowgirls on the horses. Free T4 is just the cowgirls, okay? You need to know both of those. You need free T3 and then bound T3, okay? And then a reverse T3 is another type of a test that's run. And that can give you a pretty good idea And then, of course, I forgot the most important that we're talking about today. You want to ask your doc if they would run thyroid antibody testing for you. Thyroid antibody testing. Then you're going to find out, is that enzyme being attacked? Is the horse being attacked? Or there's actually also another one. I don't want to get into this, but a little bit harder to understand. It's called a microsomal antibody. And that means it's attacking literally the energy powerhouses that make energy in the body, in the thyroid gland. So there's a couple of ways that the immune system is attacking. Our own immune system is attacking our thyroid gland. You want to make sure rarely will physicians on just a regular scan order thyroid antibodies. So you can actually, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought here, but because I got so many things going on, where do I want to go with this? Is I want to go into a little bit of therapy first. So what do we do about it? So I gave you all the hypothyroid. If you want to know the hyperthyroid, just think of, I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but it's like, look at a person that just ran a race. Like I said, they're going to have increased appetite, fast heart rate, a lot of anxiety, nervousness, irritability, on and on and on. Something's wrong. Get it checked out very quickly. That one's a nasty one. That's when the gland is first attacked. Oh, I know where I wanted to go. Bring me back to center here. So all of the weirdness of toxicity. So iodine is one of the minerals, is an element in the chemistry periodic table. I know you guys want to forget about high school. When you had chemistry class, it gave you headaches, it gave you nightmares. It was a class you hated the most to go to. But I'm telling you now, you're going to have to relive it for about 1 second. In the periodic table, you have iodine, bromine, chlorine, fluorine, okay? Now, those are all, they look like each other. They're about the same size molecular, and they can fit into that thyroid site that the thyroid usually uses for iodine. So if you're in an iodine sparse area, that could be like the Midwest, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, in that belt area, the glaciers stopped right about Illinois, Iowa, right in there. And the glaciers contained a ton of ocean water, right? That ocean water is filled with iodine, and they call it the goiter belt. Goiter is a huge enlargement of the thyroid gland underneath the neck in response to an absence of being able to get a hold of iodine. So remember, I told you a thyroid attack by Hashimoto's can create a goiter. Goiters were so big in ancient China. The people that lived on the ocean suffered severely from arthritic problems. And the people high in the Tibetan mountains had goiters so huge, folks, they used to throw the goiter over their shoulders because it was so big. So when the salt trade started occurring and the salt was brought up from the ocean and traded to the people in the mountains, and the mountain people, their salt was taken by the people on the ocean, all the problems went away because of the high minerals like magnesium, cobalt, molybdenum, boron, manganese, calcium, all from the mountains. That helps arthritic problems. And the salt from the ocean with more iodine in there helped all these goiter problems in ancient China. So we've known about thyroid. We didn't know the word thyroid. There's a word, goiter is a mass in Chinese, and there's a Chinese word for it, but we were effectively treating it way back then. How did we treat it? Haijiao Kumbu. What are those? Seaweed and kelp. What does kelp and seaweed have in them? What are they loaded in? Iodine. Those sea vegetables concentrate iodine from the ocean. Now you can take salts, Celtic salts, not Himalayan, not as high in iodine, but even salts like Celtic salts aren't high enough in iodine concentration to really help a thyroid issue. They're good for maintenance, but you need concentrated iodine. And so we use bladderwrack, which is actually a sea vegetable, a seagrass loaded in iodine. I add a little bit of ashwagandha to try and help the adrenal. This is a whole nother topic. You have to treat the adrenal gland first, or support it at minimum if you're on a thyroid product. If you're taking Synthroid and you're not supporting your adrenal gland, I would say you're going to end up in trouble. There's three main drivers to metabolism in our body. One is sexual hormones, One is adrenal function, like the fight or flight glandular system, adrenaline, norepinephrine, that's your adrenal. And the last one is the thyroid. You got three main drivers. So, okay, you're a woman around 49 years old, your sexual hormones are going down, you don't have as much estradiol anymore, the main driver of your estrogen anymore. So that's gone down. So you can't depend on that for metabolism. So you're going to start gaining weight, having bone issues, probably a little bit. All the other symptoms I was talking about, hot flashes, night sweats, and so forth. Now, all of a sudden, your adrenal function goes down. Why? Stressed out of your gork. You're going all the time. You never rejuvenate. You're never taking time for yourself. Your adrenals are just exhausted. Who's the only player holding up metabolism? It's the thyroid. The thyroid saying, dude, do that. You went on vacation. You know, come on back, sexual hormones. Come on back, adrenal function, because I can't hold this whole load of metabolism on myself. It's what we call not a primary hypothyroidism, a compensated thyroid. This is a big problem in America because as soon as a woman goes to a physician, especially gynecology, and says, I have cold hands, cold feet, I feel chilled, my fire of life is just about out, what's the first thing they do? Put them on Synthroid or levothyroxine. Bad thing to do. Figure out with this woman, what are the other things that are going on in her body? If she's right around the change of hormones, think about that. Supplement the adrenal. Sometimes it is so stupid simple, folks, that all you have to do is support the adrenal gland. There's a ton of herbs that do that very, very effectively. Ashwagandha, Korean ginseng, rhodiola, oh my gosh, Wang Chi or Scutellaria. There's a ton of herbs. I'm sorry, not Scutellaria. Wang Chi is astragalus. There's a ton of herbs that help support the adrenal. And there's a lot of herbs, great herbs that will support the hormones in the female, including estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So if you bring those back in the woman, the thyroid says, oh, thank goodness you guys are back in town. Now I can stop reacting or hypo-reacting because I'm the only one holding up the boat. And the woman recovers. The hot flashes go away, the cold hands and cold feet go away, the hair starts coming back. And they're like, wow, amazing. I didn't even have to take a thyroid gland. I was like, yeah, it wasn't a primary hypothyroidism. It was a secondary or a compensated thyroid problem. Something else was wrong that caused the thyroid to go awry. I didn't even mention calcium is needed to convert T4 to T3. So it could be just stupid, simple, like you have calcium deficiency. That's why a calcium level should always be done when you're monitoring thyroid. And your protein level, I told you that one before too. If you don't have enough protein, that can cause a problem with the horses. Not enough horses take the cowgirls around the track. So it's not so simple as just giving it a drug. Can you understand this now? The thyroid is a very, very complex system, and you have to have a complex theory to go along with it. The treatment for this strategy is literally not synthetics, it's natural products. If you truly have Hashimoto's and you have a thyroiditis, to put that little sucker to bed, which means reduce the effect of that immune system attack on the thyroid, we have amazing, amazing natural supplements. This stuff was invented in 1950s, 1960s, and fell out of use. They're called protomorphogens. And this is the tissue. This is actually thyroid tissue, just like from a cow. I don't think they use a pig anymore, but a cow. And this thyroid tissue, we can ingest that in tablets, and it distracts the immune system to look at that and leave the thyroid hormone alone. It's very oversimplified, but the theory is we actually can reduce the inflammatory attack on the thyroid right away. Now you have to look at, if the thyroid gland is weak, give it thyroid tissue, give it the whole thing. Let it decide what it wants to use. Give it the T4, give it the T3. Where's that coming from? Unfortunately, a gland of an animal. If you're a vegan and don't do any animal products, you might be on the synthetic and do your best job there. But you have to use a glandular material. There's nothing better to feed the thyroid gland than thyroid glandular material. It actually has all the enzymes, like I told you, the peroxidase. It has the conversion factors. It has all the nutrition that the thyroid gland needs. Without getting in too deep, has everything the thyroid gland needs. So what is that? Well, there's a brand that came out called Armor Thyroid. That was a glandular product. A lot of docs don't like that because ultimately you can't control exact levels of the thyroid. In natural medicine, there's something called Nature Thyroid or NP Thyroid that just came back to the market. That's very, very effective at supplying the thyroid gland everything that it needs so it can recover. Folks, it's just so much. And I wanted to bring this topic to you because so many women are suffering from thyroid issues. And before you go on meds, please check out your body out. Call my office, 398-4550, and find out what's going on. Just get a consultation or evaluation if that's what you want. If you really want to dive deep right away and be sure what it is, get an exam and call Judy at the front desk, my front desk assistant, 398-4550, and say, hey, I'm in California and I need an evaluation. Fine, there's what we're doing, Zoom, or there's telemedicine. We do that, right? If you're local here, stop on by, make an appointment, stop on by and get yourself checked out. The key is get it checked out. I told you that this problem, Hashimoto's, is so rampant. It's undiagnosed. And that's hence the name of the show today, is the undiagnosed thyroid. We estimate about a third of American women are walking around today in America with undiagnosed thyroid issues. Undiagnosed thyroid, which means they already have the problem, hasn't been diagnosed by a Western physician. And unless you start early and start picking up some of the signs and looking at the labs from more of a functional point of view, I didn't even get into that today, but I will look at your labs and see, is there potential that you might have thyroid issues going on? So I hope you enjoyed today, at least the information, but that's not the important part. I hope I changed someone's mind to call and get themselves checked out. Because if you never get it checked out, you'll never know. And I hate people suffering from long periods of time without really knowing what ultimately is going on with them. So the goal is give the office a call, 398-4550. Or you can actually get online, info@traditionalchinesehealing.com. Those symptoms aren't going to go away, folks, by keep on exercising, by eating great. This is a glandular issue. This is internal medicine that you have to deal with here. And you have to get the communication system. The chicken has to talk to the dog and talk to the horse and all of those kind of key players. You have to go through every single aspect of why that thyroid could be malfunctioning. And sometimes it's not the thyroid. Sometimes, like I said, it's another tissue. So if I can't help you, I'll tell you I can't help you. If I need to, I'm going to refer you to a Western doc. You come in blazing hyperthyroidism. I was like, I'm not going to address that. Western medicine does that very, very well. But I'm talking to the 95% of you that are suffering from chronic hypothyroid problems, that are still suffering even on medications because you don't answer the question why. Why is the thyroid gland not behaving like it should be, right? So give the office a call, 398-4550. Got nothing to lose. Actually have free consultations and evaluations that can be set up or go directly right into an exam. I have been happy. I've been pleased to provide this service to you today. Hopefully it's been important for at least one person to change their lives. Dr. Stuart Shipe. And I don't change the lives, the dear Lord above does. So if you don't know him, then you're really in trouble, which obviously is Jesus. So get involved, folks, and check your body out. If you don't know what's going on, you'll never be able to solve the problem. May the Chi be with you. May the dear Lord bless you dearly with good health. Until next Thursday, I'm Dr. Stuart Shipe. Sajid.
You've been listening to A Better Way to Health. Dr. Stuart Shipe, right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Rocket Mortgage.
I'm Steve Kathan. Before the first crack of the bat, the coronavirus